and never giving up. And that's what we did by fighting so hard against the most powerful people in the world, even the President of the United States, in order to make this vote happen today. I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me. And I want to tell you that this only became possible today because the American people whom we serve as representatives here in Congress demanded that this vote happen, and they put more pressure on every single elected politician in this city than has ever been put on them. And today you are going to see probably a unanimous vote in the House to release the Epstein files, but the real fight will happen after that. While I want to see every single name released so that these women don't have to live in fear and intimidation, which is something I've had a small taste of in just the past few days, just a small taste. They've been living it for years. But the real test will be, will the Department of Justice release the files? Or will it all remain tied up in investigations? Will the CIA release the files? Will a judge in New York release the information? That's information that needs to come out. And will the list of names that these women privately hold, and they hold it because of their fear in their heart of what would happen to them if they release it on their own, will that list of names come out? That's the real test. So I want to thank Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna for your bravery in doing something that is much needed in America, crossing the political aisle that has become bigger than the Grand Canyon in America. But these men crossed that aisle on behalf of these women. And that is more of what is needed today in America than ever in our history. So thank you so much. Who's next? Ro, I'll let you introduce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marjorie, Representative Green, for your courage and your words. Before I introduce our survivors, I just want to say that they will make their statements, and then you can ask questions of Representative Massie, myself, or Representative Green. But we do not want people asking questions and cross-examining the survivors. They're here to tell their stories, and they should be heard by the American people with respect. Of course, Congressman Massie, myself, and Congresswoman Green would be happy to answer questions after that. With that, let me introduce the survivor who's helped organize a lot of this, and will be telling her own story and introducing the other survivors. Haley Robson, thank you for your courage and leadership.
Absolutely. Thank y'all. Oh, good morning. It's a little chilly coming from Florida. Not used to it. I want everybody to take a look. I know everybody sees us today as grown adults, but we are fighting for the children that were abandoned and left behind in the reckoning. This is who you're fighting for. This is who Congress is fighting for. This is who the House of Representatives are fighting for, and hopefully the Senate will fight for us too. I want to kick this off right, and I want to address Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, and Ro Khanna. I want to express my gratitude for all three of you, and I know, Ro Khanna, we spoke earlier. This is an incredible thing that I'm watching as a Republican, and this is non-political, but for you to go against your own party and to be ostracized. There's no place for political violence. There's no place for intimidation. And I can say firsthand, stepping out against Epstein and his crimes against children, we have all experienced that ourselves. So for you to knowingly put yourselves at risk and put your career at risk is unbelievable to watch, and we are so grateful. I also want to make a proposition for Marjorie Taylor Greene, because you've been an advocate for this. If you decide to read those names on the House floor for immunity, I will be more than happy. No security needed. I will stand beside you. I will hold your hand. I will hold your coat in solidarity with you. And on top of that, I did talk to Jayapal, who said she would be more than happy to read those names too on the floor with all of us. It's time that we put the political agendas and party affiliations to the side. This is a human issue. This is about children. There is no place in society for exploitation, sexual crimes, or exploitation of women in society. There's no room for it, guys. We're not having it. And to the President of the United States of America, who is not here today, I want to send a clear message to you. While I do understand that your position has changed on the Epstein files, and I'm grateful that you have pledged to sign this bill, I can't help to be skeptical of what the agenda is. So with that being said, I want to relay this message to you. I am traumatized. I am not stupid. I am traumatized. I am not stupid. You have put us through so much stress, the lockdowns, the halt of these procedures that were supposed to have happened 50 days ago. The Adelita Grijalva who waited to get sworn in and then get upset when your own party goes against you because what is being done is wrong. It's not right. For your own self-serving purposes, this is America. This is land of the free. Land of the free. In 1863, we have a woman on top of the Capitol building represent freedom. I do not feel free today. I don't know if the women behind me feel free today. So I am begging every member of Congress, every representative, to step up and choose the chaos. Choose the survivors. Choose the children. Protect the children. All children. You protect all of us equally. Thank you very much for your time. Following that, Lisa Phillips will be the next survivor.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Phillips. It's an honor to stand here again for something America is finally united on: the immediate release of the entire Epstein files. In a divided nation, this is one demand we all share. Last time I stood here, I made a promise to all survivors watching. If those in power refused to release the truth, we would start uncovering it ourselves. For anyone who doubted that, that moment has already arrived. Since that day, more survivors across the country and around the world have reached out. Text, emails, DMs, firsthand accounts, and evidence. Many are women who were abused or trafficked through the international modeling pipeline Epstein built, promising visas, apartments, opportunities, futures, while exploiting their dreams for abuse. Most are still terrified to speak publicly because the men involved are powerful. They're connected, and as we know, they're protected. For too long, survivors have watched others speak for us. And while we are grateful for our allies in Congress on both sides, we've realized something. This fight belongs to us. We lived it, and we know the truth. And we will not wait quietly for institutions to decide when we're allowed to speak. The survivors now coming forward have entrusted us with their stories. We are sharing that information with the proper authorities, and when it can safely be made public, it will be. So today, we are launching something historic. The first national, survivor-led political movement in America. Nonpartisan, laser-focused on exposing the systems, the loopholes, power structures, and silencing mechanisms that have protected predators for far too long. We are stepping directly into the halls of power, into the political arena. We will help rewrite laws that failed us and build protections for our nation's children together, targeted by sexual exploitation. Together, today, survivors begin our own fight, the survivor revolution. And we intend to change this nation for the better. If you're a survivor who wants to join us, please reach out. And to anyone who benefits from the current system, intentionally or not, remember this. Alone, yes, we are afraid. But together, we are feared. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am Jenna Lisa Jones, and just as Haley, I would just like to give a little reminder that this was me at 14 years old. I was a child. I was in 9th grade. I was hopeful for life and what the future had held for me. He stole a lot from me at 14. So just a little reminder there for everybody. Sorry. So, I just want to start out by saying thank you for all of you for being here today. I want to start by expressing my deepest gratitude to the members of Congress who have stood with us, the survivors, in demanding the transparency and justice. Your support is a signal that this institution can still serve the American people. This issue was never one that should have divided us the way it has. In fact, it should have united us. Sexual abuse is not a Republican issue. It is not a Democratic issue. It is also not a hoax. We are here as American survivors of a man who used his wealth and power to hurt young girls and women. The world should see the files to know who Jeffrey Epstein was and how the system catered to him and failed us. Emotionally, this process has been distressing. First, the administration said it would release everything and applauded President Trump for that. Then it fought to release nothing. Now that checks and balances of our democracy have worked and the bill is getting passed to release the files, we are hearing the administration say they intend to investigate various Democrats who were friends with Epstein. I beg you, President Trump, please stop making this political. It is not about you, President Trump. You are our president. Please start acting like it. Show some class. Show some real leadership. Show that you actually care about the people other than yourself. I voted for you, but your behavior on this issue has been a national embarrassment. It is time to take the honest, moral ground and support the release of these files, not to weaponize pieces of the files against random political enemies that did nothing wrong, but to understand who Epstein's friends were, who covered for him, what financial institutions allowed his trafficking to continue, who knew what he was doing but was too much of a coward to do anything about it. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were able to recruit and abuse young girls and women. Then the country will learn nothing, and has horrible history will repeat itself if we do not do something about this. Thank you to the brave congressmen and women who have stood by us and recognized our side is the American side, and we should all be proud once again to be Americans. I want to just extend my thank you so much to all three of you very, very much. The first time we were here, listening to the, people yell shame at you, and when she was here in support of us, really hit home and spoke some volumes, and I just very much appreciative of your support, and we stand by you. Don't let any of them bully you. We're here for you. Yes. Thank you, guys.
Wow. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming together today and taking the time to listen to us. Your presence means the world, and it shows commitment to understanding and supporting survivors and Americans. I stand before you today with a heavy heart. I originated from Brazil
and I came to the United States when I was 8 years old. I was only 14 when I first encountered Jeffrey Epstein, and my daughter is now almost at that age. At 14, the only things she should be concerned with are going to school, practicing at her cheerleading competitions, and enjoying her time with her friends and family. She should not have to bear the burden of worrying about being manipulated or exploited. At this age, she is still a child, and no child should ever have to face such threats. I also want to address a troubling statement made by a prominent figure on a major platform who suggested that a 14-year-old should not be considered a victim of pedophilia. This is a dangerous and incorrect notion. When we talk about how children at 14 should still be treated as children, I ask you to look at the young people around you. Remember when you were that age? Do you think you should have been responsible for being groomed? Put yourselves in our position when we were young. I'm here today not to just share my story, but to call on all of you to help make a difference. We need to support to push for the Transparency Act and release the Epstein files. Please reach out to your Congress members and senators and urge them to support this crucial legislation. The truth is something that we all deserve, and it is vital for safety and protection of the future of generations. Think about all the young people in your life, your daughters, your nieces, your friends. Let's stand together and ensure that they grow up in a world where they are safe and valued. I often wondered, why did this happen to me? And then I realized, God only gives you what you can handle. I'm here for a purpose, and that purpose is to make a difference today. So let's stand together to protect our children and our peace. Thank you.
Yes. Good job. Good morning. I want to say a few things before I begin. My speech may not be great. It was thrown together last minute as I only came here, decided Friday, when one of us, who has spoken several times, decided she couldn't come because of the threats. She was too scared. So I want to say, when you threaten one of us, you're threatening all of us.
Yep.
We are together now, and that's never going to change. This is me at 16 when I met Jeffrey Epstein. Now I'll start. It is an honor to stand here before the American people. However, I shouldn't have to stand here at all. I'm here because as a child, I was pulled into Jeffrey Epstein's world, a world built on exploitation and manipulation of innocence and the protection of powerful men and women who believed that they were untouchable. Today, we'd rather be preparing for the holidays. We'd rather be at home with our families, baking with our children and decorating the Christmas tree, as we try to move past this horrific moment that has impacted our entire adult lives. However, that's not possible because it's become something it should have never been, political and sensationalized. The truth is simple. We were victimized as children and failed repeatedly by the very system that was supposed to protect us. That's why we stand here today, to demand justice and accountability, not just for Epstein and his crimes, but for every predator and every enabler who participates in or protects abusers. The Epstein case was gravely mishandled consistently and deliberately over many years. Epstein could have been stopped decades ago, but instead he was able to continue his abuse, even during his sweetheart deal, yes, with his ankle monitor on and beyond. A deal that protected him and silenced us. While I was a child fighting to survive what happened to us, federal prosecutors were negotiating ways to shield powerful adults. And the failures didn't stop there. Our civil cases were met with hostile judges and delay tactics, intimidation, and PR campaigns designed to smear us in the public eye. We were treated as problems to be managed instead of victims to be protected. Today, something has changed. Individually, our voices were whispers. Together, they've become impossible to ignore. We are encouraged to see elected officials from both parties, thank you, come together and finally take action to release the files. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Good job.
Yes, Ashley.
Good morning. My name is Wendy, and I'm standing here today with a truth that still scares me to say out loud. I'm going to put this down because I can't hold both, as you guys saw, but that was me when I was 14 when I met Jeffrey Epstein. None of us here signed up for this political warfare. We never asked to be dragged into battles between people who never protected us in the first place. We are exhausted from surviving the trauma and then surviving the politics that swirl around it. When survivors travel to speak, to advocate, to stand for the truth, we do it with our own money, from our own pockets, carrying our own fear, shaking in our own bodies. There is no team, there is no paycheck. It's just us hoping our voices make a difference. And it puts a pit right in your stomach because you know you're standing on the right side of history.
Yes.
But standing on the right side of history is not a comfortable place to be.
Yep.
It never has been. And in a sick, heartbreaking way, it's an honor to show up, an honor to speak here, and an honor to stand in light when the world tried to keep us in the dark. And what keeps me standing is, even with all this fear, I have a 14-year-old daughter myself, the same age I was. And when I look at her, I see the little girl I used to be, the one that no one protected. My greatest fear in this entire world is history repeating itself. And I will do anything, absolutely anything, to make sure that she has to never be one of these girls standing in front of a crowd like this today in her life. So today, from the safest and bravest places inside myself, I am asking Congress, please pass the bill. Please release the records. Stop making survivors fight alone for the truth that should have protected us in the first place. To the representatives that support us, thank you. Thank you for standing beside survivors so we don't have to face this fear alone. Thank you for choosing what is right over what is easy. And every survivor who is scared right now, your fear is real. Your courage is real. And even though we're terrified, we keep showing up. Because someone has to tell the truth. Someone has to protect these children. We deserve safety then. We deserve it now. And we are done being afraid so others can stay comfortable. So with that, I want to say thank you guys for having us. And I just hope that people can remember that as survivors, our story never leaves us, but the choice that you make to pass this bill, your career is in front of you. And that choice will follow you. Everybody will know. So
Yes.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Good job, Wendy.
Well said, Wendy.
You're incredible.
Hello, everybody. My name is Danny Bensky. This was me at 17 years old. Oh, I'm sorry. Coming from the dance world, I was recruited in 2004 after a systematic breaking down where Epstein leveraged my mother's brain tumor scans. He threatened me to withhold care for her. He trapped me in a year-long cycle of abuse. The last time I was here in Washington, D.C., I talked about being a part of this beautiful mosaic of women behind me, and they are exactly that. They are a beautiful mosaic of energy and passion and love and life. I am one story of 1,000. You think of that number, 1,000. I spoke of how big our hopes and dreams once were, and I talked about how they were completely shattered at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I look at this amazing community behind me. They are survivor sisters. We are together. We stand together in this. And I realize that we are a representation of women across America. We come from different backgrounds. We have different religions. We are different races, different creeds, different ethnicities. We have different political affiliations. Some of us don't want to be political at all. And yet we stand here together for this cause. We're united in the call for transparency, complete transparency, to find justice. Justice for our younger selves. These pictures that you see, they're real people. I wish I could go back and give my former self a hug and say, this matters and it's going to change, and mean it. We are standing here for justice for the youth of tomorrow. And justice for those who are no longer with us, like the beautiful, brave Virginia Giuffre. We understand that the road is long, but I implore you to stay the course, please. Living in an age where you can get news in 10-second clips on your phone, I know that this is a big task for us, but it's a very personal one for survivors. It's a very personal one for us as a country. So I'd like to ask you to try something right now. I'd like everybody to close their eyes or soften their gaze just for a moment. And I want everybody to think of a child that is close to them between the ages of 14 and 18 years old. It could be your daughter, it could be your niece, it could be a friend's kids, it could be you at a former age, it could be your mother at that age. But really envision that for a second, 14 to 18 years old. Once you think of that person, I want you to think about what they feel like. What is their energy? What do they smell like? What sound do they make when they laugh? Really think about that child just for a moment. Now I want you to picture a pair of giant looming wooden doors and an overbearing marble landing. Those are the doors to Jeffrey Epstein's house. Do you allow that child to enter or not? If the answer is yes, you would allow entrance. You stand with predators. If the answer is no, then congratulations, you're on the right side of justice. Now you have homework. I am calling for the American people. You have homework. Call your congressional leaders. Call your senators. Please support this bill. Let's get it all released. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Annie Farmer, and this is a photo of me and my sister Maria Farmer. Around the time I was 16 and she was 25. That's how old we were when we were abused by Epstein and Maxwell. Survivors have repeatedly stated that our pursuit of transparency and justice is a nonpartisan issue. But given the political noise surrounding this case, I just want to remind people of some of the facts. In 1996, when my sister Maria bravely blew the whistle on this group by reporting to the FBI what Epstein and Maxwell did to both of us, they hung up on the phone on her, and there was no follow-up of any kind. Bill Clinton was president. In 2006, the FBI came to us, finally interviewed us, and asked us both to be witnesses against Epstein. We were very anxious, but we agreed. And then we didn't hear back from them due to their infamous sweetheart deal. George W. Bush was president. In 2015, when the DOJ was sent FOIA requests for Maria's FBI files, and they were denied, as they have been many times, Barack Obama was president. In 2019, when Epstein died in prison due to either negligence or foul play, Donald Trump was president. In 2023, Maria's attorneys sent a letter on her behalf to the government, requesting an investigation into the repeated law enforcement failures in this case, similar to what was done in the case of Larry Nassar. They declined to do so. Consequently, my sister filed notice that she would be suing the government for failing to uphold its legal, ethical, and moral duties in this case. Joe Biden was president. This year, after campaigning on a pledge to finally release the files, under Trump's second presidency, the DOJ announced they were closing the investigation into Epstein's co-conspirators, and then transferred Ghislaine Maxwell into a prison camp, where it is well documented that she is receiving special treatment. Yep. This is not an issue of a few corrupt Democrats or a few corrupt Republicans. This is a case of institutional betrayal. Yeah. Because these crimes were not properly investigated, so many more girls and women were harmed. My sister because of her bravery, was repeatedly threatened and lived in fear, with dire consequences for her health and her career. 30 years later, even as oceans of allegations and obvious truths have emerged, the government has still not chosen transparency. This is why we have all come together as one united voice to demand the release of all the Epstein files and to finally bring the truth out of the shadows.
Yes. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of Congress, and everyone gathered here today, I want to start by thanking the three of you. Thank you. It takes a lot of bravery to do what you're doing. We hear you. We see you. It means a lot for you to be here with us, and I know my sister would be incredibly proud. This is the moment she was fighting for and the moment that all survivors are fighting for, so thank you. My name is Sky Roberts, and I stand before you as the brother of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, a warrior, a mother, and a sister whose legacy will forever resonate in the hearts of those who understand the fight against injustice. Today, we find ourselves in a place of deep sorrow, shattered by the loss of our beloved sister. Yet, we are honored and privileged to carry her voice forward and continue her relentless fight alongside her fellow survivor sisters. Virginia's story is one that should have been filled with promise, but instead it became a harrowing tale of exploitation and survival. At just 16 years old, she took a job at Mar-a-Lago, believing she had secured a dream summer position. But that dream quickly morphed into a nightmare when Ghislaine Maxwell preyed upon her innocence. This isn't just the story of one girl. It's a story about the insidious nature of power and abuse, a dark chapter in our society that must be told. Virginia was no stranger to trauma. In her memoir, Nobody's Girl, she shares the painful truth that she had already suffered abuse at the hands of our father and a family friend. But what happened next was unfathomable. Epstein and Maxwell didn't just abuse her, they trafficked her to a network of the rich and powerful. Princes, prime ministers, politicians, financiers, and lawyers. These men committed unspeakable acts against her will, and against the will of countless survivors who stand united with us today. Virginia's strength was tested in many ways that most of us can hardly imagine. She was manipulated, coerced, and threatened, forced into complicity in her own devastation. She often spoke of psychological scars that ran deeper than the physical ones. From the start, she wrote, "They manipulated me into participating in behaviors that ate away at me, eroding my ability to comprehend reality and preventing me from defending myself. The most destructive wound they inflicted was that of forced complicity, a betrayal of self that was crafted by her abusers. But I stand here today to declare that their tactics of fear and intimidation did not work. Virginia's spirit could not be broken. She became a beacon of hope, a warrior, fighting not just for herself, but for every survivor who suffered in silence. She said, "I felt it was my duty to stand up to predators like Epstein and Maxwell. I would put my neck on the line to make sure my daughter never has to go through what I had to endure." These survivors like Virginia have transformed into mothers and strong women, fierce in the face of adversity. Many of them have daughters the same age they were when they faced their own abuse. They are determined to break the cycle, to shatter the silence that has kept so many in the shadows. Virginia quoted in her memoir, "There I was, as the mother of 3 children. I felt it was my duty to stand up to predators like Epstein and Maxwell. I mentioned to Ellie in particular, her daughter, I would put my neck on the line to make sure she never has to go through what I had to go through. I said, joining Edward's CVRA case, said what I would want somebody to do for my daughter or sister and friend. In the end, I said, I was just trying to do the right thing. That's what I felt like I'm doing," I said. "I'm making a small dent in this big world we live in." Well, sissy, you didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact, a resounding statement that echoed across the world. You built an unbreakable wall, a barrier that will protect future generations from the horrors of abuse. As we gather here today, I urge each of you, members of Congress, advocates, and all those who hear this message, to join us in this fight. We demand justice, accountability, and support for survivors. And we keep getting asked this. What does justice mean, you ask? It starts with acknowledgement. That's the first step. Acknowledge in the face of survivors that this happened and that this is true. Your vote carries that weight. My sister is not a political tool for you to use. These survivors are not political tools for you to use. These are real stories, real trauma, and it's time for you to stop just talking about it and act. Vote yes.
Yes.
Amen. Virginia's legacy is not just hers. It belongs to all of us who stand against injustice. Together, we will ensure that the voices of survivors are heard, that the truth prevails, and that the horrors of the past are never repeated. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for standing with us. Together, we will not let Virginia's fight be in vain. Together, we will not let the predators win. Together, we will be the change this world desperately needs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was so beautiful.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein in 1991. I always share the date when I talk about my story because people rarely acknowledge how long this has actually been going on. And for too long, truth has been buried, survivors have been silenced, and powerful people have been protected. And today we stand in a moment that will decide whether our government still belongs to the American people or to those who prey on them. Because when mountains of evidence and decades of victim reports across 5 administrations still lead to sweetheart deals or no prosecution at all, this isn't just one case gone wrong. It's an institutional failure on a historic scale, and every member of Congress and this administration must answer for that failure. Millions of sexual abuse survivors know the pain of speaking up and watching the institutions that are meant to protect them look away. We're not alone in this. Epstein may be the headline, but the betrayal reaches every corner of our country. And if our justice system can collapse this completely for so long, then Congress cannot pretend that the system is working. Not for us, and not for the generations that will live with the consequences of what they choose now. one long overdue step towards repairing this damage is the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Because without transparency, there's no accountability. Without accountability, there is no justice. And without justice, democracy dies.
Yeah.
So representatives, you have a choice to show millions of Americans whether you stand with us or with the powerful predators that are counting on your complicity. Thank you.
Yeah. Good job.
Good morning. This is me. This was me. My name is Charlene Rochard, and I stand before you today not as a victim of rumor or conspiracy, but as a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Far too long, survivors like me have been dismissed, silenced, are told that our pain was exaggerated or fabricated. Let me be clear. This is not a hoax.
Yes, it's not.
What we endured was real, and it has scarred lives across 5 presidential administrations. The truth has been buried in sealed files and hidden records for far too long. The Epstein Files Transparency Act is not just about survivors. It's about America itself. How can we keep America great if the principles the nation was founded on, that power belongs to the people, is not protected? No one, no matter how wealthy and well-connected, stands above the law. If we cannot face the truth, then we betray the very ideals that defines us as a country. By passing this act, Congress has the chance to prove that truth matters more than privilege.
Yes.
That justice matters more than influence. And that America has the courage to confront even the most uncomfortable realities. This is not just about survivors. It's about every American who believes in accountability, fairness, and the promise of justice. I stand here today not only for myself, but for every survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse who has carried this burden in silence, and for every citizen who believes that justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
I want to thank Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey for standing with us. Thank you. And I especially want to thank Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her unwavering support, her courage to stand with us and demand transparency gives us strength. Thank you. It shows that this fight for accountability is bigger than politics. It's about humanity, justice, and truth. This is about America's future. It's about whether we, the people, will be heard when we have the courage to stand for truth and justice. Our voices are real. Our pain is real. And our demand for justice will not be silenced. Thank you.
Amen. Girl, Charlene.
Hello.
Good for you, girl. You did amazing.
My name is Laura Bloom McGee. This is my first time speaking publicly about my abuse. As a young woman in New York City, I was pursuing a modeling career and building a life of giving back through my philanthropic work. Instead, I was intentionally groomed and became part of an international model sex trafficking ring that was led by Jeffrey Epstein. I was sexually and mentally abused by Jeffrey Epstein. He used my dreams and vulnerabilities to silence me. Today, I am here to break that silence. Sex trafficking and sexual abuse are crimes against human beings, not political talking points. For too long, Epstein's abuse was an open secret, with his network remained protected. Evil thrives in darkness. We must shine a light on every corner where it hides. Nothing should be off limits in the search for truth. Please vote that everything in the files be released. Let investigations proceed without obstruction. Demand oversight and deliver justice. The government must never side with predators. I come as one survivor, but I stand here for everyone who prayed for me, who believed in me, and who hoped for me. To my fellow survivors, your courage brought me here. We are more than victims. We are mothers, daughters, sisters, friends. This is not a hoax, and we will not be erased. Shame on any elected official who obstructs truth and justice for the American people.
Yes.
Thank you.
Amen. Yeah, girl.
My name is Liz Stein. In 1994, I was a senior in college, just 21 years old. I had aspirations of attending law school after graduation, and it looked like I had a bright future ahead of me. 1994 was also the year I met Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. My involvement with them changed the trajectory of my entire life. The Epstein files are not about loyalty to any one political party. They're evidence of a crime. We stand here today, victims of the crime of sex trafficking. I'm here today speaking both for my 21-year-old self and for the countless number of people who have experienced sexual violence. When I am asked what I would tell my younger self if I could say something, I say that I would tell myself to tell someone. And if they don't listen, to tell someone else. And to just keep telling until someone listens. And even if nobody listens to you, you should be proud of yourself because you stood in your uncomfortable truth when others could not. And that is true bravery. We stand here today as survivors, part of a sorority that none of us asked to join. We have told our stories over and over and over. Now it's time to see who was listening. We ask that you vote to release the files, all of them, so the victims of this crime can finally see justice. Thank you.
Amen. Yes! You go, girl.
Well, hello, everyone, and I want to first say thank you for your ongoing leadership. I know it must not be easy thing to do, much like it's not easy for us to be doing this, so I guess we're in this together, so thank you so much. I feel like our courage has, we're reflecting, mirroring courage, because that's what it takes to do this, right? So this was me at 22 years old. I was not a child, technically, very young adult. I imagine most of you here can relate to the mindset and to be 22 years old. So today is a good day, and I thank God for that. It's widely and undeniably clear that our current political climate is quite rigid and seemingly at war with one another. This sets a stage. This sets a stage for voices, survivor voices, to get spoken over and drowned out by the political darts whizzing by. Not today, though. Today, our truth and our power have steadily risen up. We are at the peak. Our voices prevail today. Our voices initiated the coming together of both political parties. That's pretty big, I think. Republicans and Democrats, we all stand together today. We all stand together for justice, and we must continue to do so to protect the integrity of our country and our democracy. Truth and justice must prevail. The children today are those that will lead this nation one day. Think about that. What does that mean to each of you? If anyone doubts that this does not directly contribute to the fate of our country and democracy, I challenge you and I urge you to think again. Our voices are a fundamental pillar of future generations. Today, that's what we stand here for. Accountability, action, and justice. Let's get this vote done today. Let's send it through the Senate and straight to President Trump's desk for signing. I'd like to be there that day that he signs. I'm sure all of us would like to be there. Today is a good day, and let's keep moving forward. Thank you so much. I
just want to give you a hug.
Okay.
Hey guys, we're actually pressed for time, so we are not going to be taking questions. Going further, I bring back Rokana. He's going to do our closing conversation and comments.
Well, thank you, Haley. Teresa is right. It's pretty big what the survivors have accomplished today. And I just want to say how eloquent, strong, and admirable they were. Let's give them a round of applause for their courage. Thomas and Marjorie and I will take a few questions from people.
Go
ahead.
Is basically right now calling on the Senate to make revisions to this bill because he says it doesn't adequately protect the survivors, the victims that are standing behind you. Your response to that?
That's been a red herring all along. The survivors have always been in favor of this legislation, and there's a provision in there you can read, if he would just read it, that protects them. Now, if he wants to offer more protections in the Senate, that's fine with us, but here's the problem. Now we have to vote on it again in the House. And so, as you heard, justice delayed is justice denied. It could be just another delay tactic. But we want to...
Is that what you think? That's the motivation from the Speaker?
I think the Speaker wants to save face. He's going to vote for a piece of legislation today that he's disparaged for 4 months. And however he needs to come on board, we want him on board. So we appreciate that.
Did you want to? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I wonder, what do you say today to Andrew Bassett-Windsor, the man formerly known as Prince Andrew?
Well, you know, there's becoming a reckoning in Britain that needs to happen in the United States. A prince lost his title. The ambassador to the United States lost his job. We need to see those same kind of consequences here. As my colleague Rose said, there shouldn't be buildings named after these perpetrators of these heinous crimes. There shouldn't be scholarships named after them. And there needs to be accounting. We've seen tens of thousands of pages released by the Oversight Committee. What we've not seen is a single name. So I implore you to look and see if we have true justice and transparency in here. And the survivors will know when that has happened.
And I do think that Prince Andrew does need to come and testify at our oversight committee, and that can be bipartisan. But I share Thomas's view that the urgency that the British people have shown in getting justice needs to inspire an urgency here in America.
You don't need legislation.
Go ahead.
You don't need legislation.
Go ahead.
You don't need legislation to get the files released. President Trump could just release them today.
Well,
Is that frustrating for you? Why isn't he doing that? And also, did you ask him to be here today? It's a really powerful moment, this.
Look, I'll let my colleagues speak. I hope the president meets the survivors, and I hope when he signs the bill, the survivors are there. I don't care if I'm there, Thomas Massey's there, Representative Green's there, but the survivors should be there. But I hope he meets them, because I think if anyone who meets them and sees their emotion will be moved. And my goal is to get justice here. So I hope he will meet them and really hear what's happened and actually take action. But the broader point is, yes, the president could order the Justice Department to release the files. But in a constitutional democracy, what we're supposed to have is Congress says that the files should be released, and then it's not on the whim of any president. Then the Justice Department is compelled to release those files because that's the law of the land.
Let's just take a
Have you spoken to any Republicans in the Senate who are looking to, move this forward?
So Senator Merkley is a Democrat. He's led the exact same legislation that Roe and I introduced in the House. One Republican co-sponsored his bill yesterday, and I have spoken to at least one more who says they will co-sponsor. The important thing about the Senate is that they need not to muck this bill up. There's a lot of attention on here. We've needlessly spent 4 months dragging this out. A representative, a duly elected representative, was denied her seat in Congress for 49 days, and it's time to pull the Band-Aid off. The Senate, it may be tempting for them to get cute and to do things that will limit the release of these documents. They are afraid that people will be embarrassed. Well, that's the whole point here. They need to be brought to justice, and embarrassment is no reason to stop it. So the Senate, John Thune, it's up to him. He needs to bring this to the floor of the Senate. And I think the vote today will show that in the House.
And the president, look, the president has said he would sign the bill. You're going to get almost a unanimous vote here. So you have the president and a unanimous Congress believing that this protects the survivors and is calling for the release. There's no reason for the Senate now to, as Representative Massey puts in, muck around with it. They need to put it up, have a vote, have the president sign it. If there's any further protections, they can do that through the DOJ process. But what they should not do is delay a vote on a bill that the House is going to vote overwhelmingly for and that the president supports.
On the release of these files, Councilman Green, you raised the question of whether or not the Justice Department will actually release these files. Do you take the president at his word when he says he's going to sign this bill, and do you have confidence that these files will actually be released?
I only take people's actions seriously, no longer words.
And what do you think the president's actions?
And I'll tell you, because I wasn't a Johnny-come-lately to the MAGA train. I was day one 2015, and there's a big difference in those Americans and those that decided to support President Trump later on. And I'll tell you right now, this has been one of the most destructive things to MAGA, is watching the man that we supported early on, 3 elections, for people that stood hours, slept in their cars to go to rallies, have fought for truth and transparency and to hold what we consider a corrupt government accountable. Watching this actually turn into a fight has ripped MAGA apart. And the only thing that will speak to the powerful, courageous women behind me is when action is actually taken to release these files, and the American people won't tolerate any other bullshit. That's where we are today. Thank you.
Go ahead. Last, 2 more questions, and then we're around all day.
Is this a watershed? How would you sum up today in terms of your battle to get to the truth?
I would say that these survivors have been fighting for decades, and they finally are being heard by the American people, and we're finally going to have a reckoning for this Epstein class that has gotten away with horrific things. Look, I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. People went to church, they played Little League, they went to their neighbors for barbecue. They didn't go to a rape island and abuse young girls or traffic young girls. And people with extreme wealth have thought that the laws don't apply to them, and their culture is totally out of touch with the values that built America. And finally, we're going to have a reckoning over it.
How worried are you?
Let's take the lady here.
Let me ask you this. You said you wanted this to go straight to the Senate. What message does it send to the survivors behind you if the Senate doesn't act quickly to move this bill forward?
Well, they're not here. They're not going to answer questions, so I'll answer a question. I prefer, actually, it goes straight to the president. He can release these files without the Senate acting. Sometimes they take a long time to get things done. The House figured out a way to take 4 months to get this done. I think it's disrespectful to the survivors if they delay this. There's nothing more important than cleaning out the rot in this country. And this is rot, and it's not a partisan issue. And the senators need to get on this. Yes, the economy is important. Yes, international policy is important. But there's nothing more important than getting to this rot and cleaning it out. They should put it at the top of their agenda.
You know, there's a provision in the bill already that would allow the DOJ to not release certain information if it would jeopardize an active investigation. And the president just last week ordered his DOJ to conduct an investigation. What makes you think you would actually, if this bill passes, see these files?
There are 1,000 survivors. They can't open enough investigations to cover up everything that's in these files. And yes, it's true they can try to protect a few certain people or a few certain companies, but those investigations will eventually end. And in the meantime, there's not enough investigations to cover up 1,000 different crimes, 1,000 different rapes, 1,000 different sex trafficking instances. And this is not a moot point, even though they are doing that.
And once this bill is signed into law, any career official at the DOJ or the FBI who does not comply with the law is at legal risk. It's no longer just up to the president.
Look, we could have passed a simple resolution here in the House, and that would have been the end of it. Instead, we chose a very hard path, which is to get legislation, a law passed, which means it has to go through the House, the Senate, and be presented to the president. And that will have the force of law. They will be breaking the law if they do not release these files.
Thank you very much. Last question, and then.
Why do you think he has fought so hard? If he could do it now, why hasn't he done it?
I believe he's trying to protect friends and donors. And by the way, these aren't necessarily Republicans. Once you get to $1 billion, you transcend parties. You just assume you can pay off whatever party is in charge of the White House, whatever party is in charge of the House of Representatives. And this is about those kinds of people. I think he's been trying to protect them. And I think it also incriminates our own government. This is a complete and total failure of the justice system, as the survivors have witnessed here today to us. It incriminates the FBI. It incriminates our intelligence agencies. It incriminates police departments in West Palm Beach. And that's what has been protected by this, either willfully or unknowingly, and it's time to end it.
And I would agree with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene that what matters now is just the action. I don't speculate on what politicians' motives are or what's in their heart. The point is the American people have spoken, Congress has spoken, release the files. It's time for justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
You're watching Lawmakers and Epstein survivors speaking out ahead of a House vote to release the Epstein files. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna called this a day of real reckoning for what he calls the Epstein class. And he applauded his Republican colleagues for pushing for the vote despite pressure from the White House. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie thanked survivors for coming forward, saying they're giving everybody hope. And he called on his colleagues in the Senate not to, quote, muck it up and do anything that prevents any disclosure. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said they fought against the most powerful people in the world, including the president, to make this vote happen. She said President Trump called her a traitor for standing with Epstein survivors, saying she's now had a small taste of the fear and intimidation survivors have lived with for years. And those survivors of Epstein's abuse also spoke, showing photos of themselves at the young ages they say they encountered Epstein, and saying that's who they're fighting for. They're also urging all lawmakers to join them in that fight and vote to release the Epstein files. ABC's Jay O'Brien and White House correspondent Karen Travers are here with more on all of that. Hi to you both. So, Jay, Marjorie Taylor Greene says we'll probably see a unanimous vote today, but the real fight will be in the Senate. We heard Massey warning senators not to muck it up, in his words. What can we expect there?
Yeah, and it's very much unclear if this will even get a vote in the Senate once it does get out of the House today, Diane, because John Thune, the top Republican in that chamber who controls the floor, hasn't indicated one way or the other which way he's leaning, if he's going to put this bill on the floor for a vote. Certainly, if it passes the House by a broad bipartisan margin, which we are expecting today, that does increase the level of pressure on John Thune. But we don't know exactly how many House Republicans are going to vote for this. Marjorie Taylor Greene posits it's going to be all of them. We expect all House Democrats to vote for this, but the numbers are still very much unclear. I just caught up moments ago right here in this hallway as a Republican meeting here on the Hill was breaking up behind me with Tom Emmer, the majority whip. He's in charge of counting the votes. I asked him, will every single Republican vote for this bill to compel the release of the DOJ's Epstein files? He said, we'll see what happens on the floor. It was notable over the weekend as President Trump ramped up his attacks on Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it looks like we've got Chairwoman McClain. Will every single Republican support this bill on the floor today, the Epstein bill?
I don't know. I know. I think a majority of them will.
Thank you. She says a majority will, and Speaker Johnson is right behind me, but he's walking through and talking to someone, so forgive me there. But we did talk. That was Lisa McClain. She's the number 4 Republican in the House. The Speaker is heading to a press conference he's about to hold. But you just heard it right from the horse's mouth there. Lisa McClain in Republican leadership saying that she believes the majority of House Republicans will support this bill. It gives it a broad bipartisan padding. It increases the pressure on John Thune here to put this bill on the floor for a vote. But it's very much unclear what the outcome is, Diane.
Karen, Marjorie Taylor Greene took some pretty direct shots at President Trump at this conference just now, basically insinuating that he's a traitor. She says this issue has ripped MAGA apart. What do you make of her message to the president and the message from these survivors?
It was very direct, and it's just the latest chapter in this back and forth between the two of them over the past couple of days over this issue specifically, which has been very explosive. She said that she was called a traitor by a man that she says she fought 5 to 6 years for, and that she gave him her loyalty for free, and this is what he has turned around and is now saying about her, because he called her a traitor. He said that she has betrayed the Republican Party. She was asked there by our colleague Rachel Scott if she believes the president will actually release the files, that if these files will ever come to light. And Congresswoman Greene did say that she doesn't really take words at this point.
Karen,
really
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because Jay is talking to House Majority Leader Steve Scalise right now. Let's listen.
Of this criminal. And
but did he only change his mind when this became a done deal?
No.
Are you confident?
So that was Steve Scalise there, the number 2 Republican in the House. They're all breaking up in this meeting, Diane, and you joined us towards the end there. But just to recap, I asked Steve Scalise why the president changed his mind over the weekend and told House Republicans to back this measure. He said the president has always been for, quote unquote, transparency, but he was concerned, as House Republicans expressed concerns about the identities of the victims. They say that they've expressed those concerns to the Senate, and they say that because of the way that this has procedurally been brought to the floor via a discharge petition, which forces this vote, remember, because Johnson didn't want to put this bill on the floor without his hand being forced. They can't amend it, but they're encouraging the Senate to make some changes. I then asked, and this is the part that you saw, Scalise, did the president only change his mind when this was a fait accompli, when it had the required number of Republican votes to pass? And if it passed with the president in strong opposition to it, it would have been an embarrassment. Scalise disputes that, but the reality here is the president came out on Sunday when it was clear this bill had serious momentum and it was going to get Republican votes to get this over the goal line. And that was a 180 because the White House had worked for months to stop this legislation from getting a vote, even recently calling Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado into the White House Situation Room, a room that you can't bring your electronic devices into, to work on her to try to get her to take her signature off of this discharge petition. She ultimately didn't. She told our Rachel Scott last night she didn't feel pressure, but the fact is the same. The White House did not want this vote to occur, and only over the weekend did the president do that 180 and say that he wanted House Republicans to back this.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of the survivors, at least, are still still questioning the president's ultimate game plan here. I want to go back to Karen Travers on that. Karen, again, sorry to interrupt you. Breaking news, obviously. But I want to give you a chance to just complete what you were saying in terms of Marjorie Taylor Greene's message to the president just now, and also the message from some of these survivors.
Yeah, I mean, she was saying that it's really going to be actions that will have to convince her, not just words coming from the president and the administration about the release of the files. And we heard the president say yesterday, Diane, sure, when he was asked if he would sign the legislation if it passes in the Senate, compelling the administration to release these files. But it's really important to note, he doesn't have to wait for action from Congress in order to release the files. We've talked about this. He could do it today before the vote. He could have done it already. And there was a question at the end of that press conference to Congressman Massey about why he believes the president hasn't released the files already. And Massey said that he thinks that it's because the president is protecting friends and donors. But he was very quick to say that this transcends Republicans. This is not just about Republican friends and donors, that when you're in the White House, everybody wants to give to you. But it was notable to hear him say that that's why he thinks the president has been keeping this in. So no promise at this point from the president about releasing the files. And you heard the Congresswoman Greene there say it's going to take actions for her to actually believe anything would happen here.
And Jay, on that note, President Trump just ordered a new investigation related to Epstein and Democrats he says may have been linked to him. That's raising questions about whether the Justice Department will hold back these files even if the bill does pass, saying they can't release files connected to an active investigation. How worried are lawmakers about that? And is there any kind of a game plan if this stalls out?
I mean, we've heard some concern to that effect, but also, really, we are still at phase one here on Capitol Hill of getting these files released, because it has been months in the making of trying to force this vote to occur on the House floor. Remember, this discharge petition was months in the making. It only recently got the required 218 signatures. It needed 50 days. They waited for Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva to get sworn in after winning a special election to replace her late father in Arizona. Ultimately, she gets sworn in. She provides the last signature on that discharge petition. That's what puts us where we are now. And only today is the House voting. So as we've discussed, it kicks it over to the Senate, and then the president has to sign this. And so what I've heard from Republicans is, yes, they are concerned about how those investigations could impact the ultimate release of these files. But really, they're just trying to get this legislation out of the House to put the ball in the Senate's court. House Republicans who support this are trying to ramp up the pressure on the Senate. We heard Thomas Massey say what he said at that press conference, saying that the Senate needs to move quickly on this. I'm paraphrasing Massey here. All of that to say, yes, there are concerns about what the ultimate release of these files could look like. And there are some Republicans I've talked to privately who question President Trump saying kind of offhand yesterday in the Oval Office when he was pressed repeatedly that he would sign this bill. But all of that to say, they're not putting the cart before the horse, because they're still waiting for this legislation to clear both chambers of Congress.
So, Jay, what are you watching for next?
So watch to see. The biggest question we've been really hanging over, and you heard it based upon our questions here in the hallway, is what does the vote count look like on the floor? How many Republicans back this measure? Johnson is putting it up under suspension of the rules, which means it requires a 2/3 majority to pass. It requires, if the attendance is perfect and everybody shows up and everybody is voting, 75 Republicans to back this measure to get it over the goal line. We expect that to be the case, and as Marjorie Taylor Greene says, she believes it's unanimous. You just heard Lisa McClain on the air with you say that she believes it's going to be a majority of the House Republican Conference that backs this measure. But watch to see how bipartisan this vote is, Diane.
Jay O'Brien, Karen Travers, thank you both. And House Speaker Mike Johnson is now holding a news conference ahead of that vote. Let's listen.
The last 6 weeks in our districts, most of the members of the House, at least the House Republicans did at least, 6 weeks they spent in their district, and many of them will tell you, and they've said publicly and privately, they did some of the best work of their career because they were right there with their constituents at home in their districts, in their counties, and their parishes, in our case in Louisiana, working with their constituents and helping them navigate the consequences of the Democrats' pointless political games in the shutdown. They did some really important work. And we are ready and eager now to get back to the legislative session work, the other side of this job, so that we can deliver on our promises to the American people The Republican Party has been doing this, and we will continue. We're going to continue to reduce the cost of health care. We got big plans to do that. We're going to continue reducing prices and the cost of living for American families. And, of course, to finish the rest of the appropriations government funding process. We've been needing to do that, and we are already working around the clock to accomplish those objectives. But with so many pressing issues on our plate, just very frustratingly to us, the Democrats are delaying that work even further with a political show vote. They're forcing a political show vote on the Epstein files. So we're just going to address that right at the top here this morning because they've spent so much time, the Democrats have, spinning the facts and trying to confuse the people that I wanted to come in this morning and just clearly explain for the people back home how we got here and why this vote is happening right now. First, a quick review of the relevant history here. For 4 long years under the previous administration, under the Biden-Harris administration, Democrats insisted there was no border crisis. Remember, they told you that that wasn't a problem at all. They dismissed inflation as transitory. That's what they told us. They told the American people not to believe what we could all see with our own eyes, that there was an obvious mental and physical decline on the part of President Biden individually. And now, seemingly overnight, these same cast of characters, they've taken a sudden and urgent interest in the Epstein investigation. Suddenly, it's all in the name of transparency. That's what they're trying to tell us. But the truth is, the biggest proponents of this discharge petition were never actually interested in transparency or ensuring justice or protecting victims of this unspeakable tragedy, the Epstein evils. And how do we know that? Because the Democrats had every one of the Epstein files in their possession for the 4 long years of the Biden administration. The Biden Department of Justice had the files the entire time. And not a single one of the people who are so loud and animated right now, they never said anything about it for all those 4 years. None of them held press conferences. None of them demanded the release of the documents. And under Biden's DOJ, when they prosecuted just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, not a single one of these Democrats or any of the proponents of the discharge ever made any noise about that at all. So it's fair for the American people to ask the question, why now? Why suddenly are they so interested? They have such an urgent interest in the Jeffrey Epstein matter. The truth is simple and straightforward and obvious for anyone who is willing to look at it objectively. Clearly, this is a political exercise for Democrats and a few others, sadly, and it is as deceitful and dishonest as their pointless stunt to shut down the government. Same ideology behind this. Democrats are trying to use the Epstein matter as a political weapon to distract from their own party's failures. And in a desperate attempt, they're trying to somehow tie President Trump to the scandal. President Trump has nothing to do with it. He has said himself he has nothing to hide. And that's clearly what they've been trying to do. They're trying to attack President Trump. This is what they've done. They weaponized the justice system over the last several years to go after him, and this is their latest attempt. And they don't have a platform or a principle to defend on the Democrat Party side, so they put all their eggs in this basket. And that's why you hear endlessly about Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. Everything's about Epstein. Now, this was an unspeakable tragedy, we said that, and we have great compassion for the victims. And I'm heartened that I met with the victims. Our House Oversight Committee members met with the victims, and they deserve justice. It has been too long delayed. Not just justice for what they were made to endure, but also we need answers on why it took so long for the Department of Justice itself to do that job under previous leadership. Republicans, meanwhile, are working in earnest to deliver transparency to the American people, and we're working to do that in a responsible manner that does no further harm to these innocent people and the victims who have been wrapped into this. There are a few key facts here that everybody needs to understand. First, I mentioned the House Oversight Committee doing its work. That is a bipartisan effort. They are already producing far more than the discharge petition even anticipates. Chairman Comer is our chair of oversight. Some of the biggest bulldogs in Congress serve on that committee, you all know, and I've mentioned this so many times. They have been, on the Republican and Democrat side, they're deeply dug in. They've been working around the clock. They worked even through the government shutdown, and there were tranches of documents that were released even over that period. So far, by last count, it's over 65,000 documents, Epstein file documents, that are now out in the public for everyone to review. That includes tens of thousands of pages from the Epstein estate. And that includes Epstein's flight logs, his personal financial records and ledgers, his daily calendars, and so much more. And none of that is even written or included in the discharge petition. So in other words, the Oversight Committee is doing far more than the discharge even anticipates, and the most valuable information thus far has come from the Epstein estate files. That was produced because of the work of the Oversight Committee that is doing that in a professional, robust manner, using the full subpoena authority of the U.S. Congress. From the very beginning, our side has been insistent that this matter must be handled very carefully and with the utmost caution and care for the victims. We want maximum transparency. We have always been about that. We want every single person who had any scintilla, there's any scintilla of evidence that they were involved in the Epstein evils, they need to be brought to justice, and it should have been done a long time ago. We need to find out who those people are. But in the meantime, you have to remember there are real people's, innocent people's lives at stake here, and young victims who don't want to be dragged into this political game because it could hurt further what they've already endured. They would be made to suffer more harm if Congress is not careful in what we're doing. And unlike our very important work that's underway in the House Oversight Committee, the Democrat-led discharge petition would carelessly dump thousands of documents without proper protections for the innocent. I brought a chart in here this morning. I want to illustrate for you what we are concerned with. Now, I was a federal court litigator. The members of our House Judiciary Committee, Republicans in particular, have many of these concerns. You have Chairman Jim Jordan and attorneys like Chip Roy, who's running for Attorney General of Texas now. You have Brad Knott, who's a former federal prosecutor, many members on the committee. Andy Biggs is running for governor of Arizona. They're lawyers, and they understand that the way the discharge petition was drafted is haphazard and dangerous. This is why we have been opposed to this point, okay? And I could be here for a long time going through all the details of it, but the big concern we've all had all along is that the House bill, if it's passed in its current form and it was signed into law, it is dangerously flawed. And our problem and our frustration is there is no way for us in the House to amend it or correct these problems because the authors of the discharge will not allow it. And that's one of our great frustrations. Let me just very quickly, we have a legal document that the lawyers, we have all drafted to explain all this, but let me give you five quick, maybe the top 5 concerns about it, and there are more. But as drafted, the discharge petition, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. I'm going to read you an excerpt out of our legal document we put together to explain all this. Congress should give the Attorney General broader authority to redact all the victim information. The discharge doesn't do that. This would prevent the release of information that could be used to unmask victims who have chosen to remain anonymous. Now, you have some very brave women who have come forward and put their names and faces out there and done press conferences and explained that justice is overdue, and our hearts go out to them, and they are heroes. But you have as many as 1,000 women, by some of the accounts, who may be caught up in this. And the vast majority of them have not come forward, probably for obvious reasons. They don't want to be unmasked. But the discharge petition doesn't have adequate protections. It risks re-victimizing those who were trafficked and exploited. And the courts have recognized this concern, by the way. I'll read you a quick excerpt. On August 20th of this year, Judge Richard Berman of the Southern District of New York issued an order denying the DOJ's request to release Epstein grand jury materials, noting, quote, names and identifying information of victims appear in the subject materials, unquote. Judge Berman then quoted a letter related to the victims' concerns, which stated the following, quote, transparency cannot come at the expense of the very people whom the justice system is sworn to protect, unquote. And importantly, the judge quoted a letter from one of the victims. In the proceedings, she is named as Jane Doe 2. She said this is one of the victims, quote, I beg the court to make sure it is of the utmost priority that in any sort of release, all and every detail that could possibly reveal our identities be redacted. The victims of Epstein's evils deserve that protection, and the discharge does not currently provide it, okay? Number 2, the discharge petition could create new victims, okay? Because it requires the DOJ to release information even in cases where the DOJ or the FBI has already reviewed it and determined it is not credible. It is false information. Doing this and requiring this to come out could ruin the reputations of completely innocent people, such as those who may just have known Epstein but knew nothing of his crimes or whose names he exploited. Think of this, innocent people whose names he exploited and used to try to get close to his intended victims. Their names may be in these files, and they had nothing to do with this. And so by just haphazardly releasing it, you're going to destroy their reputations. Releasing information containing the names of innocent people would subject those innocent people to a guilt by association. It would create an entirely new group of victims who have no means to clear their names. That's a concern of Congress, and it should be. It should be. Number three, the discharge in its current form fails to prohibit the release of child sexual abuse materials. That is a term of art. It's called CSAM, okay? It's defined in the U.S. Code. The discharge is so haphazardly written because, remember, it's just a political exercise for these guys. They don't seem to care about this, but they cited the wrong section of the U.S. Code. So when they say that we don't want child pornography to come out, child sexual abuse materials, of course, we don't want that released. They wrote this thing so quickly that they cited the wrong section. So you know what that means? It means that it doesn't really bestow any real legal authority on the Attorney General to redact those materials. And that would compel the DOJ to release that stuff into the public. Every single person in this room knows that's wrong, and you should stand against it. But that's what the discharge says. Number four, it jeopardizes the future federal investigations of the United States. Why? Because the discharge only allows the Attorney General to redact limited portions of records that could publicly identify individuals who were promised confidentiality. In this scenario, you're talking about whistleblowers. You're talking about confidential informants who came forward and gave information and evidence in exchange for agreeing to have their identities not revealed. Violating confidentiality, imagine the chilling effect that would have on future investigations. Who's going to want to come forward if they think Congress can take a political exercise and reveal their identities? Who's going to come talk to prosecutors? It's very dangerous. It would deter future whistleblowers and informants. And the release of that could also publicly reveal the identity, by the way, of undercover law enforcement officers who are working in future operations. Dangerous stuff, and they seem not to care. And by the way, I'm going to remind you again, we went to the authors. We asked the authors of the discharge to change this, and they said jump in the Potomac. All right? Number five, national security concerns, okay? The discharge requires the Attorney General to release within 30 days, quote, classified information to the maximum extent possible. This ignores the principle that declassification should always rest, and always has rested, with the agency that originated the intelligence. Why? So that they can protect their critical sources and methods. It is incredibly dangerous to demand that officials or employees of the DOJ declassify materials that originated in other agencies, in intelligence agencies. I could go on. I won't be here all morning, but there's a lot of problems. There's also a lot of legal scholars, and I'm among them, who are concerned that that you've got problems with grand jury secrecy. We know Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure prohibits the release of grand jury materials, but the way the discharge is drafted, you can make an argument that it requires all that to come out, and that is a serious problem. Grand juries are not adversarial, okay? There's no opportunity there for cross-examination. You can't disprove evidence. You can't challenge the evidence in any way. And if Congress goes in and breaks that seal and just starts releasing sensitive grand jury materials and allegations like that, it raises a risk that the grand jury process will be politicized in the future. And that's a whole other danger that we could talk about all day. I'm gonna wrap this up and just say that Republicans support maximum transparency. We always have. The President of the United States supports maximum transparency. You've heard him say it in his own words. But he has had the same concerns that I've just articulated here, and we've talked about that. All of us have had these concerns, and we understand that we have a responsibility to innocent people and victims that is not properly guarded by the discharge petition. And that's why we're so incensed about that. We've got to make sure that we disclose the names of anybody who aided or conspired in any way with Jeffrey Epstein. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that innocent people are protected. So we have to do this in a way that doesn't violate victim privacy, that doesn't create new victims, that doesn't disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, that causes the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermines our national security. And I think everybody of good conscience and common sense would say, of course you have to do that. But here we are. So the discharge petition got its 218th signature, and it is going to go forward. It is going to pass, because it only takes 218. And we know that the Democrats have disregarded all these concerns, and they're going to move it forward anyway. So all the people of good conscience here say, we've registered our concerns, we stated our opposition as long as possible, but we're also for maximum transparency. So what am I to do as a leader in a situation like this? I call my counterpart in the Senate, Leader Thune, and I talked him through this with him and shared our deep concerns. And of course, they share those concerns as well. And so I'm very confident that when this moves forward in the process, if and when it is processed in the Senate, which there's no certainty that that will be, that they will take the time methodically to do what we have not been allowed to do in the House, to amend this discharge petition and to make sure that these protections are there. The authors of the discharge did not allow us to do that here. That's the rules here. But in the Senate, they can correct it. So under that circumstance, because of that, we know there's serious deficiencies. We know that the work of our colleagues in the Senate can address that and will. They're very conscientious and concerned, as we are, about all this. As we've insisted from the very beginning, Republicans are the only party trying to make a material difference in ensuring maximum transparency. Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you, I put the bill on the floor for unanimous consent last Wednesday night. And guess who objected to it? The Democrats, okay? If this is so urgent and they were so concerned about getting this done and seeing justice be done and all that, they would not have blocked the request, okay? This is about politics. They blocked our unanimous consent motion to expedite their bill and made us waste all this additional time so they could have a show vote today. Republicans are ready to get the job done, to move forward so we can continue to get on to these important issues of dealing with what the American people demand and deserve for us to deal with. And so I want to leave you with this thought. Everybody should think long and hard about who here is acting truthfully, honestly, and in good faith. It is not the Democrat Party that has obfuscated and blatantly lied for the last 4 years about all these things. It is not the Democrats who shut down the government for their own selfish political purposes. It is not the Democrats who blocked the passage of this discharge a week ago because they wanted to have a political moment. It is the Republicans who are acting in good faith, and I believe the American people are going to see that and understand it. I'm going to vote to move this forward. I think it could be close to a unanimous vote because everybody here, all the Republicans, want to go on record to show they're for maximum transparency, but they also want to note that we're demanding that this stuff get corrected before it is ever moves through the process and is completed. I sincerely hope my Democrat colleagues will show the same level of urgency and enthusiasm when it comes to tackling the real issues facing the country that we got to get to. And that's what we really wanted to talk about this morning. Affordability issues are real, and the Democrats themselves created the crisis. Remember, over the last 4 years of the Biden administration, they spent like drunken sailors, and when you throw a bunch of new money into the system, it makes inflation rise, right? Republicans are ready and eager to continue our work to clean up the mess that the Democrats made. We've been doing that already, and we're going to continue to do it. Joining the leadership team this morning to discuss our record-setting success.
We've just been watching House Speaker Mike Johnson holding a news conference ahead of a House vote to release the Epstein files. Johnson calls it a political Democrat show vote in order to confuse the American people. He says Democrats have suddenly overnight become interested in the Epstein investigation. He says the Biden administration had the files for 4 years, and no one said anything about it until now. Johnson says this was an unspeakable tragedy and the victims deserve justice, but insists the matter must be handled with care in order to protect the victims. And he outlined his issues with the discharge petition, saying it doesn't protect victims, whistleblowers, other innocent people named in the files, and it fails to protect against releasing child sexual abuse materials. But he says he will still vote to move forward on the bill. ABC's Jay O'Brien is here for more. Jay, one of the Epstein survivors who just spoke on Capitol Hill talked about hitting legal roadblocks in this case during the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, the Biden administration. So why is this vote happening now?
Well, this vote is happening because Johnson's hand was forced. All House Democrats signed on to a discharge petition, and they were joined by a handful of House Republicans. That waited, remember, languished for 50 days until they swore in a representative-elect from Arizona, a Democrat. It was the final signature. But the most notable thing there in that press conference, Diane, was the whiplash, because Johnson has fought a vote on this bill tooth and nail for months now. That discharge petition had to occur because he was opposing putting a bill to force the release of the Epstein files on the floor. Ultimately, his hand gets forced by this discharge petition. He says, okay, we're going to hold the vote today, but it's unclear where he stood. And Johnson, in that press conference, just blasted this legislation. He called it dangerously flawed. He said it doesn't do enough to protect the identities of the victims, to protect the identities of potential confidential informants. He says it sets a bad precedent going forward about anyone cooperating in law enforcement investigations from this point onward, that Congress could pass legislation that would release files of those investigations, on and on and on. He lit this legislation up, Diane, and then he said he's still going to vote for it. And the vast majority of the Republican conference, we expect, is going to vote for this because some are under pressure from their constituents. They had promised transparency about this Jeffrey Epstein issue on the campaign trail, as President Trump and his allies did as well. And also because this issue has been thrust into the national conversation. And President Trump, over the weekend, after opposing this legislation for months as well, finally gave House Republicans the green light to vote for this, saying that Republicans should back this measure and that he and Republicans have, quote unquote, nothing to hide. One more big point, though, coming out of that Johnson press conference is he gave you a sense of what's going to happen next year, because when this passes the House this afternoon, and we expect it to now because it looks like it's going to have broad bipartisan support, it goes over to the Senate, and you heard Johnson just there say that he spoke with Majority Leader Thune, the top Republican in that chamber, about changes to this legislation that he wants, about amendments and rewrites to the language of this legislation. If that happens in the Senate, ultimately then this bill would have to go back to the House, and there would potentially be another political fight on getting it out of that chamber and onto the president's desk. So right now, the ask that we know of that Johnson just told us about in this press conference is that they want this legislation, if it even gets a vote in the Senate, to be rewritten before it's put on the floor in that chamber.
And Jay, how are supporters of this legislation, which is both Democrats and Republicans, how are they responding to these concerns that Johnson is laying out here? I mean, he had a whole list and a poster with him.
And these have been Johnson's concerns and the concerns of House Republican leaders for really weeks now, and they've expressed this repeatedly. And what we often hear, Thomas Massie, who's the Republican leading the charge here, Marjorie Taylor Greene as well, who's been perhaps the most vocal proponent of this issue, and Ro Khanna, the Democrat, who's been working with the two of them. The three of them have really put this discharge petition issue forward together, is that they hear from the victims that they want these files released. And that was one of the reasons why you saw this press conference up again here on Capitol Hill. Remember, those Epstein survivors came here to the Hill in early September, and they tearfully recounted their issues with what they've seen this Congress do in terms of Epstein transparency. And they recounted their stories about how Jeffrey Epstein abused them as minors. They recounted a lot of that again today, and they said they wanted these files released. So what we've heard those proponents of this legislation say to leaders who say it doesn't do enough to protect the victims is that the victims that they hear from publicly want this legislation to come to a vote.
All right, Jay O'Brien for us on Capitol Hill. Jay, thank you. And we will have a lot more news and the day's top stories right after the break. Stay with us.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
An operation to capture ISIS fighters.
Is this our Combat Operations Center?
We're approaching the gate now. Militants came in from 4 or 5 different directions. Operational nuclear reactor. So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it. Not a tear in it. How important is this label right here, Made in the USA? Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love it.
Great work. Hi. Where are you? Where are you? Appreciate you. Thank you.
David, good to meet you.
Ismail? David.
David.
Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
Watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
Help, my fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere. Please hurry. There's a knife sticking out of her heart. Oh, no.
Philadelphia medical examiner initially ruled Greenberg's death a homicide before switching it to suicide.
How was this ruled a suicide?
It just does not add up.
Everyone realized how strange and twisted this case was.
If you want to get away with a homicide, have it declared a suicide.
Death in Apartment 603. What happened to Ellen Greenberg? Only on Hulu.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, Israeli officials say one person is dead after a car ramming and stabbing attack in the occupied West Bank. 3 others are injured, including a 15-year-old boy. ABC News chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell has the latest. Hi, Ian.
Yeah, hi, Diane. That's right. At least 3 people were injured and 1 killed in what's been described as a car ramming and stabbing attack in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. That's according to Israel's National Emergency Services. 2 suspects were killed at the scene. The Israeli Defense Force is now there investigating the attack. A man aged 30 died after receiving a stab wound. The 3 others include a 40-year-old woman who's said to be in a serious condition and a man aged 30 and a 15-year-old who are described as being in a moderate condition, also with stab wounds. Emergency teams report hearing gunfire at the scene. One emergency worker saying, "When I arrived at the scene, I saw